Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another in this four-part series of webinars. It's a real privilege to be here today with Calvin, and he's going to be co-hosting with me and keeping me honest as we go through just a fantastic discussion today on how to accelerate your career growth. So where we left off last time was really, I think, just positioning yourself for the workplace and getting yourself ready to go into the workplace, and obviously talking about how you get your CV ready and your covering letter, so on, and making sure that you're just managing things like your social media presence and your internet footprint, etc. And then today really is that next phase. You've now hopefully got the job that you were going for. You've now started to make the transition into the workplace. And we're really going to be talking about all those aspects and making sure that you have the maximum amount of success in the workplace, because that's ultimately whether you're going to start a business or whether you're going to join an existing business, the thing that you need to be focused on. But Calvin, over to you. How are you doing today? And what do you think are the key things that people will need to get out of today's session?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I'm doing great. Thank you very much. And welcome to any new students that have joined us today that weren't here on Tuesday. So welcome to you and thanks for being here. Quickly, if you are new, I'm heading up the Professional Development and Industry Exposure portfolio at the EBIT faculty at University of Pretoria. And my name is Calvin. And I think I'm just so grateful again, Peter, for you taking the time out of your day to be here and to share your wisdom with us. But yeah, essentially, after the first webinar, hopefully one's got their foot in the door at a company, and now I think the real work starts. So really, what I'm hoping that we can understand from this webinar is branding. Okay, so how do you brand yourself well? And as you're going through the ranks, how do you brand yourself well? Some tips and tricks there. Then time management is also obviously key. Maybe some interesting stuff on that. I think that's something that we all try to improve on every single day. We only have a fixed amount of time in the day, and I like to think of time as your most precious commodity. So at every moment in the day, you can either do two things with your time. You can either spend it or you can invest it, right? So that's what I try to think of time. I try to invest my time correctly instead of just spending it and wasting it. So that's something that I'm hoping that you can touch on there. And then also building a professional network. So once you're in the workplace, how do you go about building your network? And there's a lot of different types of networkers. I listened to an interesting podcast a couple of weeks ago, but that I'll maybe share with everyone at a later stage. But yeah, how do you go about networking and really and just connecting with people and making sure that they've got your back at the end of the day, because that's how you grow your career, is not alone, but with other people. So I'm hoping we can touch on those things today.
No, that's great. Thank you very much, Calvin. Appreciate that. And certainly think that we will cover all of those. So yeah, let's get straight into it. And I think really what we rely on as well is just for everybody that's on this webinar today, please pop a note in the chat. Tell us which university or college or educational instance you are from. I think the bulk of us are probably going to be from Pretoria University today as part of Calvin's engineering world up at Tucky's there. But please also do ask specific questions in the chat. We really would like to add to some of the great points that Calvin has mentioned there, which we will certainly cover. And we'll pop some of those comments up on the screen for everybody to have a look at, and then we'll go through those. So please do pop a comment into the chat, say how's it, and tell us where you're from, and then ask questions. And what's great also, Calvin, I was noticing in the webinar on Monday, if anybody missed that, was just the interaction between people in the chat and helping each other and potentially answering questions. And that's something that we really encourage in. For example, we have the members only Facebook group for the Student Success Coach, and in there people can come in and ask questions and get the help that they need, not just from people like myself, but from each other, because you all also have lots of insight that's useful to share with each other. All right, so please, guys, do just pop some thoughts in there. And that'll help us, just to pick up the questions that you've got as we go through it. All right, so let's get into it, Calvin. I think just such an awesome topic, and if you take these two webinars and you put them together, and I made the course available on Monday. It really does come in the two sections of boosting your job prospects, so positioning yourself for the world of work, and then once you've got into the world of work, how do you then accelerate that career growth? How do you, take maximum advantage of the progress, that you want to make in that world? So I guess the first point to make is that you shouldn't, be too hard on yourself for trying to get a big break. I think I spoke last time about, I had to get out of 150,000 Rand student debt, and I got a break with someone that agreed to take me on and sort of almost pay off that loan, but basically give me employment, give me a job, and that's ultimately you're asking for a job and you're hoping for a big break. And your big break, whether it comes in the application process or later on in your career, I do certainly believe that all of us will have, some form of breakthrough opportunities. And I really just think you shouldn't place all your hopes and expectations on those coming too early in your career. And you should just be, very focused on the here and now and the actions that you can take to move you forward. And I think one of the actions that I left you with on Monday was, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, to go and set one up. And the reason for that was so that we can get into a bit of a LinkedIn discussion today, because the question on Monday was, are you expected to have an impressive LinkedIn profile? Well, the fact is, if you've been studying full time for 4 years, you're not going to have much work experience to put on there. But there are things in your LinkedIn profile, like the recommendation section, where as another action that I asked everybody to take on Monday, inside your new LinkedIn profile or existing one, was to go and choose 5 people to get a recommendation, and you're more than welcome to pop me a connection request, and I'm happily to share good quality content and just help build your network. So LinkedIn is going to be part of that whole aspect of networking that Calvin spoke about there just now as well. And as I was saying, actions are really the thing that you can control and that are well within your sphere of control to take action, to do things. The big breaks that are going to come to you and the big opportunities, and the Gary Player used to say, the harder I work, the luckier I get. So take action, do the things that are right in front of you, and those big breaks, those opportunities will come in future. All right, hi there to Julian and Cara. Great to see you guys saying, how's it coming on stream? Please, the rest of you, just pop us a note, say, how's it? Let us know that you're out there and you're listening in, and that hopefully you're getting some value from your sessions today. Now, the second point that I put there, I'm not coming across negatively there. It's not about, not getting your hopes up about anything at all. It's just about, being focused on those actions and then accepting the best possible outcome of those actions as the next steps that you need to take on your journey, both in terms of getting into the workplace and being part of an organization. And very much the same that applies to your studies as well. The harder you study, the more likely you are you're going to get a big break, and the section that you studied is going to come up in your exam as well. Don't try and game the system and study for specific sections, or game your job application or your career process, etc. That steady, consistent hard work, I think, is what is going to win you through in the long run. And as you go through those tasks, and as you go through each day, and Calvin mentioned it already, this idea of branding, and you're building your credibility and reputation through each task, through each day. And in the communications course that I shared on Monday, which I think many of you have kind of hopped into and got some benefit from, I talk about the fact that if you can use the word done in your language, in online meetings in the workplace, in discussions that you have, you build a reputation and some credibility for somebody who gets things done. And as organizations, we're looking to people that we hire to create value, and the only way that they create value is when they cut through. And we spoke about this idea of these silos in our large organizations. If you can cut through those silos and deliver value horizontally and get those projects and those milestones and those outcomes done, you build a reputation and credibility for somebody that is asked to do bigger and bigger pieces of work, and then we'll have better and better opportunities to climb the ladder. But fourth there, and these come from the worksheets in the course, whereby you can go through and tick these off and apply them in your own life and your career. It does take a while to move up. I think I've hired many people in the years, many people straight out of varsity, and there is just very often an unrealistic expectation of the time that you need to give to building and growing and investing in a career before you then see some of the things that you actually would expect to see. Now, I'm not saying you need to slog it out in a dead-end job where you're not being rewarded and your boss doesn't like you. I'm not saying that at all. You will have to apply some judgment, as you navigate the world of work and choose the companies and the careers that you want to go through. But if you're ticking the vast majority of boxes, if you're generally speaking in the right culture, if you're generally speaking working with good people and getting good opportunities and putting your skills into practice, but you just feel it's taken a little bit more work to get the outcomes and the progression than you want, then before you try and change anything, just do the more work. And then do some more work on top of that, and then do some more work on top of that. And even if after all of that, then maybe you need to think about a change, etc. But your first decision, your first response to difficult circumstances or a delayed expectations coming through is to do more work, do more action, do more in each day. And we'll talk about time management just now. We all get 24 hours. Use those 24 hours more wisely. It's the things that you can control. Stephen Covey talks about the sphere of influence and the sphere of control. And stress really comes from where those spheres don't overlap, and you are trying to influence things that you can't control. You can control to a large degree what you spend your time on every 24 hours, and you should put your time and effort into those 24 hours that best positions you to make the progress and achieve what you want to in the workplace. It's no different to varsity. It's no different to schools. No different to life in general. It's no different to being a dad or being a mom or any endeavor that you have in your life.
Peter, if I can just
And
quickly
Calvin,
butt
jump
in
in there.
there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So this might actually add to one of your later points, but speaking of your judgment in the workplace, I recently just finished a stint of vacation work at a professional services firm in Johannesburg, and at the end, myself and a leader of mine, or guy who was leading me in this project, we had a chat, and I said, what is the kind of main distinguishing factor that you look for, or that you look for when, not just in students, but when people actually hire and start working in this company? And he said, technical abilities no longer separate who's good and who's not. It's actually your professional judgment that separates who's going to get promoted to the next level. So, and I personally think that level of professional judgment comes with worldly knowledge. It comes with you reading things outside the domain of your degree. At the end of the day, your degree is just simply a piece of paper. And you need to just expand your perspective. Go and choose a couple of books, go read them over the next 3 months, and just think about different things. And when all that comes together, I really believe that your judgment really improves. So just adding to what you were saying there, Peter, about training people to make better choices and better judgments, I think that comes with expanding your perspective and just being curious at the end of the day. So that's just a tip that I can give you guys from the horse's mouth, and I'm sure, Peter, that you can attest to that. And I hope you guys can take that with you over this year, actually, during your studies.
No, that's a great point, Calvin, and I think I absolutely support it. And it's one of the reasons that people like Elon Musk and others, will not necessarily go to the graduates and the universities. They will look for that, as you say, professional judgment, the school of hard knocks, the ability to think wider and outside your immediate field. And I would definitely support that. It's that differentiation you get. And as we spoke about on Monday, for example, if you do Udemy courses and you acquire additional skills that are peripheral to your world, that could then make all the difference and gives you that wider perspective, that improved judgment that Calvin was talking about. If we hire an accountant, we expect them to be able to do accounting. But if we've got 10 accountants in a team, we're looking for the one that's, differentiates themselves through something, some way in which they think or solve problems or apply their accounting skills in a different way to other people. And some universities do a better job than others of helping, bridge the world of those technical skills and that academic qualification into the working world. And I definitely think that the more you can do, the better you're going to be able to position yourself. And the more you'll be able to stand out in the workplace. And we had a question on Monday. Someone asked, should you go and do internships in the holidays? And absolutely yes. Obviously you do need a break. You do need to have some downtime and relax a little bit. But if you've got an opportunity to go and get some working experience, you can put it on your CV. You can talk about it in your interview. You can mention it in your covering letter, and it gives you the confidence that you have some experience with that environment when you go in there, so that you're not only doing the job that you're expected, but you're using, your discretionary energy to look for other ways in which you can add value, and step up. So welcome to everybody that's joined. Michelle, Cara. Yes, so Cara, the next two webinars in this series are on the 29th and the 31st of March, where we'll be looking at digital disruption and digital transformation. So those will have a similar structure as we go through two halves of my digital masterclass. And I'll teach you about key concepts in the sections of that course. But as always, Karen, as you know well, and what I'd like to invite everybody else to is obviously the Friday 12 o'clock lunchtime webinars, which I also run right here on this channel. And tomorrow we're talking about communication skills in the workplace, which was the course that I made available to you at discount on Monday. And I see a lot of people have benefited from that. And thank you for coming in there and being one of my students. But in the session tomorrow, I'm actually going to teach you, all of those tips and tricks about how to communicate effectively in the workplace. And I think, Calvin, to your point just now, you get engineers, right? And I mean, an engineer that can communicate better and knows how to write emails and knows how to conduct themselves in online meetings and knows how to conduct, verbal one-on-ones and engage and communicate better than another engineer is going to have, that step up difference. They are going to be the ones that will be at an advantage in the workplace, because the workplace relies on those generic skills. If I think about First Rand, we rely on those skills in those different departments, but we rely on the leadership, we rely on the interaction, we rely on the collaboration, we rely on collaboration, we rely on those differentiators for us to be successful as an organization.
Yeah, yeah. And then quickly, just to add to that, Peter, is guys, at the end of the day, the managers are what create value in your company. People who lead other people, and you can't lead other people unless you have those soft skills, unless you have those communication skills that will enable you to get pieces of work done. If you look at top salaries, they're all managers. You're probably not gonna find many cases of someone who's purely technical earning more than someone who manages other people. So that's got to be the goal at the end of the day if you're looking to climb the ranks, and that only comes again with developing those skills outside the domain of your technical expertise.
Very good point, Calvin. And I think what I would just do to add to that, a very valid point, is to say that you are all also managers of yourself. So I think the context that you're talking about, Calvin, is you're managing other people, and the skills that you bring to as your own individual self are fantastic. But you need to add on to those in terms of your maturity in managing yourself and applying the time management and the disciplines through which those skills can add value in a workplace. But of course, if you're then managing a number of other people, you're aggregating all of that value in that team environment. And in fact, I launched another course this morning, which is directly from my PhD, in which I spent 5 years studying agile organizations around the world, in which I really tried to unpack, the secrets to success for high performance teams. And I developed a theoretical framework that helps managers understand and read the human factors in team environments to make better decisions about how to optimize that environment to get the maximum productivity from those teams. And if you think about the exponential firms that have started up in the last 10, 15 years, and we'll talk a lot more about this in the digital masterclass webinars at the end of the series, but those were small teams. They might have been in a garage. They might have been in, Elon Musk's bedroom or in Mark Zuckerberg's dorm room at Harvard, etc. That he created value as himself, but then to get the scale and the value that he did from a Facebook or Elon Musk from his companies and many others, they needed to be able to manage others. And that's where their individual growth came from. And they obviously hyper exponential growth in their net worth and so on. So 100% to your point there, Calvin, I just want to talk about Jade's question here.
Yeah,
100%. Reading is great. How do you practically show the companies how you are different to other applications? Now, as an online course creator myself, I have a very simple policy: transformation over information. Now, you can get information anywhere today. You can go on Google, you can go on YouTube, you can go and read. I guarantee you it's all out there. When you find somebody that is invested and committed in your personal transformation to help you achieve specific goals, a part of which is information that you need to acquire in order to get there, that's the type of course, or that's the type of process that you need to go through. That's the type of activities that you need to spend your time on so that you can show you're different to the other applicants. Saying that you've read a book, anybody can read a book, but saying that you've learned how to apply what you learned in this book by doing X, Y, and Z in this and this example is how you practically demonstrate that you're different to the other applicants. Okay. And I find this in my workplace every single day. We are all flooded with information. We all have, consultants and research papers more than we could consume, more than I could read in 10 years. I have to cut through an unbelievably high volume of information to find the people and the engagements and the relationships and the teams and the hours in the day that's going to lead to transformation over information. Now, it could be transformation of myself, it could be transformation of my team or my organization. It doesn't matter. And we'll talk about digital transformation, which is at the enterprise level of how you digitally transform an organization to take advantage of these new technologies. But I would say, to answer your question, Jade, at the individual level, you need to be thinking about transformation over information. Michelle, if possible, could you recommend one or two must-read books or works for undergraduates? Yes, absolutely. And we actually asked Daniel Robust this very same question in our sort of most anticipated, most watched webinar of the year, which was a couple of weeks ago. And I'll actually pop the link in the chat just now for you to go and have a look at. But I'll give one that he recommends and one that I recommend. And in the 2 or 3 companies that he actually built up and sold off very profitably in his career, he referred a lot to a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. And Good to Great is a little bit more the sort of corporate entrepreneur handbook, if you like, which I have also read and found very insightful, and probably has a little bit more the sort of MBA type of style that I would have enjoyed. But if you can cut through that and you can extract the key principles of what made the organizations in there successful, which they do a couple of case studies on, then I think as a graduate, you kind of leapfrog yourself into that business world through a very powerful set of principles and ideas that Jim Collins developed in that book. The one qualifier that I would put on there is that it is a little bit dated now, and a couple of companies that they did a case study of in there actually have failed. So that's also something for you to go and have a look at there, and maybe interact with me and let me know if you go through the book. Go see which companies he was going on about, but they've fallen off the wagon. And I'll teach you about winners and losers in the digital disruption webinar in a couple of weeks' time. So I think anything you got to take with a pinch of salt, but Good to Great. And we've used it quite a bit in First Rand, but as I say, Daniel Robust used it quite a lot. The one that I would recommend is a book called Lean Startup. And Lean Startup really goes into the mind of an entrepreneur and gives you sort of almost life lessons for how you approach, getting work done, how you approach, and it's not necessarily just about starting a business, it's about creating value. It's about how you approach needing to change direction, how to pivot. And it is slightly more based in the sort of software development world. And Eric Ries, who wrote Lean Startup, ran a couple of successful businesses, and he really then took the time to jot down his thoughts in Lean Startup. It's a very quick, easy book to read, and I'll actually post a book review of it that I've written so that you can go through it. But you'll read it in a weekend, whereas Good to Great is going to take you a bit longer. Lean Startup is something that I recommend. Calvin, I don't know if you've got any book recommendations, and maybe let's just throw it open to anybody else on the chat. Put your book recommendations in there. Let's share and care.
So I'm currently reading a very, very interesting book called No Rules Rules. Okay, so it's about the culture at Netflix. It is seriously worth the money for that book. I couldn't put it down. And that's just so interesting. It's good to do things differently is how I would summarize that book. If you haven't read that one already, but the one that I would recommend, it's a classic, but you know what? It's got so many valuable tips in there. It's called How to Make Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. You won't believe how practical that book is. You can literally read a chapter, walk outside, and go and apply it. Like it's insane. And that really helped me, to help me connect with people, how to make friends, how to influence people, how to get them onto my side. So yeah, really, really interesting. I really recommend that one.
Thanks, Calvin. Appreciate that. And I've just put a link to that review that I wrote of Lean Startup. And then I've also put a link to my other book reviews. So there was a book on automation and the impact of jobs in North America by presidential candidate Andrew Yang, who, as you know, obviously wasn't elected, but I think he's a part of the cabinet in America. And he talks about the impact of automation and technology on the workforce. And that was quite interesting. And then I've got a book there on Bitcoin. I've got a book there, a review of a book by Gary Kasparov, who obviously lost as a professional chess player to IBM's Deep Blue in the famous chess championship in the late 90s. And very interestingly there, I mean, I could do a whole webinar on that book, but in the review, and you can go and pick it up from my book review page there, he talks about how IBM, it wasn't really a chess machine, it was an anti-Kasparov machine. And we'll touch on some of those things in the digital transformation in a couple of weeks. And then Eric Ries is there. And then, of course, Elon Musk. So I would go and read Elon Musk's book and get inside the mind of obviously a South African born, mega wealthy entrepreneur that sort of disrupted multiple industries, as did Steve Jobs. So, you can also go and read Isaac's very comprehensive and kind of thick review of Steve Jobs' life, which I've also read, but I actually didn't get around to reviewing it. So apologies for that. I don't have a review for you on that one. Zianda says that How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie, on my table as much. Now, Zianda, what I really love about the conversation that we're having now is that this is where we get the value from, right? The book is a book. It's on your table, right? It's sitting there. It's a piece of paper between two covers. But the fact that we're now discussing it and that we're giving each other insights about it, and that's the type of thing that we do in our members-only Facebook group and the Student Success Coach, and that's the type of thing that I encourage that you do in your communities and in your networks of people, and what you should continue doing in the workplace. But if you're able to take that static piece of information and then understand on top of that how you can use that to achieve transformation at an individual level, at a team level, at an organization level, you will be successful. You will have a fantastic career in the workplace. Okay, so let's crack on then. And yeah, go ahead, man.
No, sorry, Peter, quickly. So, guys, if the idea of reading these massive books, it seems daunting, and you might say, no, I don't have the time to do it. And I understand we're all busy, we all have our lives, and we're all students, and we're trying to study. Peter, you're probably busy out of your mind every day. But, guys, if you read for 30 minutes, just 30 minutes a day, you'll finish the average book in 2 weeks. Okay, if you finish the average book in 2 weeks, you're gonna finish about 26 books a year. Okay, so in 2 weeks, if you finish every 2 weeks. Okay, so that's a lot of books, guys. That's more than your friends. I can guarantee you that. So 30 minutes a day, small wins will get you a lot of value. Just keep that in mind as well.
And what I'd really like, and look, as I said to Calvin, I make my time available because I do genuinely have a desire to help and be part of this. And Calvin and I set up this webinar series a few weeks ago, and I'm very excited to do it and to help all of you. And I genuinely want you to be successful in your studies and in your careers. What you can do for me is, and I just put a couple of links there, you can go and subscribe on the YouTube channel. There's an ebook that I've just released called Get Heard Communication Skills to Double Your Impact in the Workplace. And I've put it on free access promotion for this week. And, as Calvin said, you can go and do 30 minutes of reading and you'll probably finish it. And if you can leave a review on that book on Amazon, if you're a Kindle reader, I would deeply appreciate it, because then that makes the work that I put into creating this content just that more sustainable. Okay, let's get back to the content. I think that discussion was a great little segue. And yeah, of course, guys, read. And then just the last thing that I would say, write your own book. Write your own book. Okay. I taught myself this year how to self-publish on Amazon. Write your own book. Don't think that you always have to consume. You have learned, you've studied, you've got lots to offer now. So step up and set a goal for yourself that you're now going to start contributing. I gave a talk at a school the other day about digital citizenship, and the piece of advice I left at the end was the single biggest problem that we have with certainly kids in the internet age is that there's an overconsumption of content, and the internet is hungry for action and data. Okay. The internet is constantly wanting you to take action and leave your digital breadcrumbs. Okay. And that is the data that comes from consuming content. What we need to be doing and what we need to do to turn the tide on fake news is to be producing great content. And I've got absolutely no doubt that all of you on this call today, if you've been in an academic environment, if you've taken the action of stepping up and being part of the series today, you have got something to contribute. So the digital age has democratized the ability to produce. It's no longer just the publishers, and we'll talk next week about Microsoft versus Wikipedia. Now, it's a classic case of a large corporate thinking that they can corner the market of producing information, whereas Wikipedia is a crowdsourced, self-published website, effectively, that is a good secondary source. It's not a primary source of information. That completely destroyed and disrupted Microsoft's model that they wanted to create around owning the production of information. Okay, so go and look at my ebook there, please, and leave us a rating and a review. Okay, back to the slide. Coaching, very important. Find a coach you trust, build a relationship. As I say, I offer coaching. We actually have launched a mentorship program in the Facebook group. And when you go onto the page, you can actually click mentorship. And we've got people loaded in there that are willing to be mentors. Now, this is a little bit more, while you're still doing your studies, but the same applies in the workplace and in your colleagues and maybe in the broader community where you find yourself working. You should find a coach that you can trust and that will then guide you and sort of mentor you through, but is never going to override your boss and shouldn't ever really conflict with your relationship with your boss. And I've had instances where my boss has asked me to go and get coaching from somebody else, and where I've said to my boss, look, I need to go and get some coaching. And it's always seen as an important part of developing a career. We'll talk a little bit more about networking just now. Okay, then just in terms of building up a CV, now we spoke on Monday about, a LinkedIn profile, and that you're not going to have an immediately impressive one. And as you start going through the workplace, and certainly something that we look for on CVs is a little bit of depth and consistency in roles. Now, if you ask me, I would say 12 to 18 months, okay, in a role gives you some substance and some depth and some real opportunity to create value and make a contribution. Any less than that, it may come across, in the absence of a proper explanation, as being a little bit too frequent in terms of moving around, and certainly from company to company. Within a company, you could certainly, move around and do different roles, even within a project or a department, etc., possibly in more than that. But my counsel and my advice to you would be, when you go into a role, manage your own expectations. And we were saying earlier, Calvin, manage self, right? So you're also a manager of self. Manage your expectations of seeing that as an immediate stepping stone, and say, I'm going to settle into this role. I'm going to really get to grips with the content and the expectations of this role, and I'm going to see myself in this role for a year, and I'm going to reevaluate at the earliest after 9 months. And I'm not going to come in next week and say, oh, I'm getting a bit tired of this, and he's got a better role than me, or there's a job down the road, or I saw an advert on Facebook last night. You've got a job. You're in the top, whatever percentage of it is. Thousands, millions of people don't have jobs out there. Take that role and consolidate your contribution to it in a 12 to 18 month period. And then 9 months, 10 months, 12 months, you can start lifting your gaze and having some career discussions. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Get your advice from the mentor, etc. But that will just help you avoid always looking for the next big thing, the next role that you need to get into as you go. Now, like Calvin was saying, you might be, in an audit firm and you go into a job, and sometimes those audit roles in a job, are 2-3 months, whatever. And sometimes, as I was in consulting for 10 years, you might only be doing a role for 2-3 months in an organization. That's fine. That's out of your control. But the type of work I was doing over multiple projects, let's say I had 4, 5, or 6 in a year, for example, was pretty consistent. I wasn't saying now I'm a process expert in Accenture, and now all of a sudden I want to become an ERP expert. Carl was not saying I want to audit in the financial services industry, and then next month I want to go and audit in manufacturing, because auditing in each of those different industries are going to be quite different. So consolidate yourself and make sure that you get depth in a role as you go through it. And this
And
is
then
what
quickly, Peter,
obviously, yeah, go ahead, Calvin.
So, and I know, Peter, that for a fact that a lot of the groups and firms, such as First Strand that you work for, they offer a really interesting variety of roles that one rotates through. as you get a job at the business. So for example, in First Rand, you guys will rotate every 6 months for 2 years if you get into a certain role there. And I think that should be the goal for everyone. It should be the goal to get into a company that offers that value, where you do rotate, you don't stay in one role. And unfortunately, those companies are typically harder to get into, but that should be the goal, because once you've got your foot in the door there and you rotate through these different business units, you're going to find what you like, what you don't like, and also just get a taste of different industries. And I think that's going to really help you decide where you want to go in the next 5 to 10 years.
100%. And I think a good litmus test of that is always to see yourself in future job interviews, and a recruiter or a manager looking at your CV and saying, okay, so I see you did this, and then you did this, and you did this. And as long as you've got a good storyline for that, and possibly following Calvin's script of, getting that experience, etc., then absolutely, by all means, get the variety that you need. But equally also good to be able to say, I see you in this role for 18 months. How was that? And you say, I really contributed in there. I got a lot of depth. I felt I made a lot of contribution. Because let's face it, it takes you a good few weeks before you know where the canteen is, or before you know who you need to go speak to in whichever other department, etc. So your expectation that you can come in and hit the ground running versus the reality and the complexity that you face, certainly in large organizations like First Rand, and it's often not even any much easier even in small organizations, there's always going to be a delta there that you need to give yourself time to settle in and really make a contribution over a longer period. Okay, it's just worth making a point here about your relationship with your boss. You must invest time and effort into managing your relationship with your boss. And I talk about this in the communications course by, keeping a running tally of the tasks that you're busy with so that it supports your confident verbal communication that you will have with them on a one-on-one basis. I also talk in some of my articles about, how your boss can help you identify blind spots that you may have. And in our sort of corporate hierarchical culture, and it's not a function of how large the organization is, in any organization, we have structure through management, and you will have a boss, and you should be dialed into what their expectations are of you, what they think you are spending your time on, and manage those expectations. And I've had a simple rule with all my bosses over the years: no surprises ever. So if anything happens, you tell your boss. Anything you think they might hear of from somebody else, you tell the boss before they hear it from somebody else. And it's not about being, too kind of like too close to them all the time. That's also dangerous. It's about that professional two-way relationship that acknowledges, their success as another employee in the organization is a function of how well they can manage you. So back to Calvin's point, you're going to be in that position one day, and what you would want is, for your team to keep you updated and aware of what's happening. And you'll find that happy medium. I've had bosses over the years who said, look, Pete, I don't want to know all the detail. And I was one of, they had like 20 reports, for example. Or I've been in teams where it's me and two other guys reporting into one person, and they've got lots of time to spend on me and with me. And that's when you probably then, will be in a lot more detail with your boss. So that's just an important thing to think about. And then in terms of, having a relationship with your boss, you are always going to be operating as a team. It may not be the team that also works for the same boss. It is most probably a collective of a few people working on a common project or a common set of outcomes that need to be achieved. And you need to strike the balance between the individual credit and advantage which you will get that does, feed into the promotions that you will hope to get over your career. But first and foremost, the degree to which you can play as a team on the field is, I think, going to differentiate you. Now, what you'll have to make peace with is that very often, and you'll have it in your syndicates, you'll have it in your teams at school, in varsity, whatever the case would be, you put the work in, somebody else is not putting the work in, you're compensating for them, they still get the credit because, the team achieves objectives. That's a fact of life. It's no different to varsity. And when I see my kids struggling with that and they call it unfair, I say, well, that's life. What you have to do, as I said at the beginning of the webinar, is be the outperformer. Be the person that I'm reading Barack Obama's book actually at the moment, and he talks about one of the members of his foreign affairs team, I think it was, and the simple thing that he said about this guy, which stood out for me, is you could not outwork Bob, whatever his name was. You could not outwork him, and that's one of the things, the hallmarks of my career was I've had those teams where I put in more or less effort. And I've also had times in my own career when I've needed a team to carry me. I've had a busy time. I've been going through some stuff in my life, etc. So evaluate your contribution and your progression in the organization as part of a team first, and then as an individual. Okay. And I think if you just have that sequence of priorities, don't neglect yourself. You must get paid well. You must get the promotion that you deserve. You mustn't get treated badly. You must have equal opportunities. You must be in a culture that is fair and respectful. And those are individual expectations that you have. But the degree to which you can bring a team dimension and a team lens into how you manage your career, I believe that's going to be very positive for you in the long run. Okay, hard work, patience, big breaks and achievements. Now, when you get a big break or you get an achievement, and that's a good individual acknowledgement of your input, LinkedIn again is a very good place to do that. And hopefully you'll pick up a couple of awards, and, maybe you'll get your name in a couple of articles over the years. And my daughter came home the other day and she said, we did an exercise and we all had to go and look up our parents online. And she says, Daddy, there was, so much stuff. And, another girl did it and she said she couldn't find anything about her dad and all the rest of it. And I said, look, that's just a digital footprint. That's not an indication of character or success or anything like that. You'll be very careful with the public affirmation of your achievements versus the internal track record that you keep of banking the successes and the experience that you get as you go through your career. And LinkedIn is a great place to do that, because in LinkedIn, you've got the feature whereby you can go in and log those and list them. And you can obviously add in the external articles that mention you and the successes that you might have achieved as a project, etc. And that's great. Bank those. Don't make too much of them. Let other people sing your praises. Let other people talk about your achievements. And as I say there, do that with recommendations. You can go and ask somebody to give you a recommendation on LinkedIn. It will show up on your LinkedIn page as coming from them, and massively adds to the social proof of your LinkedIn profile. Okay, Calvin talked earlier about the importance of time management, and I want to link this to the idea of being able to get things done. And if you can bring the word "done" into your vocabulary, you can get a reputation for somebody that gets things done and keeps teams and departments and organizations moving forward. You will be successful. There's no question about it. But you have to then be very clever at managing your 24 hours. And a lot of that comes through in very simple, basic ways. And, I manage a notebook, and I've done this on a couple of webinars previously, where if you look in my notebook, you'll see that the way I manage a notebook, very clearly you can run your eye, and I'm just looking for an example now, where on the right-hand side over here, you can see I put a couple of boxes next to these lines over here. Now, for me, that signifies an action. And I put a box there and I write the action that I need to perform. When I've done the action, I tick the box off. When I know the action is over and nothing's ever going to have to be done on that action before, I put a line through it. Then I take notes, on the rest of the pages. And I don't put a box next to those notes, because those are just for myself to go back and recall a meeting, whatever the case would be. So in the course, which I provided you the link for and which I touch on over here, you must manage your actions effectively. I also have a whole course on Kanban and being effective using Kanban and using a Kanban board to visualize the flow of work from your backlog through to done. And the last column on a Kanban board is actually called done. And you want to be moving your stickies, or if you do it digitally on Trello or Jira or anything like that, you want to be moving your tasks into done. You want to be ticking off those boxes. You want to be putting a line through your task. And it's the same at varsity. It's the same running a home, and it's going to be the same in the workplace. So as I've said there as well, bias for thoughtful action. If you are thoughtless in your action, we always have a saying here at First Rand, it should be, aim, fire. Okay. It shouldn't be aim, then fire. Okay. And I'm talking about fire in terms of, the shooting range, aim at the target and then fire, but calibrate based on the momentum and the action that you take. Don't overanalyze until you take action, but equally don't take action without thinking about the consequences and thinking about whether you've done enough analysis to ensure that that action is going to deliver enough value. And I go through a lot of that in the course, and I'd really invite you to come into the course and get the full lessons and the worksheets that are available there. And then get organized. And I talk about the power of 10 minutes. Now, I'm a woodworker and I have a workshop at home, and I walk in there and I know exactly where all my tools are, and I can reach for a tool almost blindfolded. What that means then is if I've got 10 minutes to do a job, I'm not looking for a tool and taking 2 minutes, or I'm not having to scan through my inbox to find an email and I'm wasting 5 minutes, because none of us have endless hours of time to spend on any given project at the same time. We're context switching between multiple things all the time. And that's something that's going to be more of a reality for you in the workplace. I would say at varsity, hopefully you do have blocks of time, you do have time set aside to study, and that's a luxury for you to be able to put multiple hours of time into anything at a given time. The reality of it is we do run around. We're all far too busy. Busyness is the new disease almost, and it's terrible. But when you grab 10 minutes to do something, make sure that you've invested the time beforehand to be organized to maximize the power of those 10 minutes that you have available. And you must apply that to anything. So if it's your desk space at home, if it's how you lay out your documents and folders on your computer, if it's your workshop that you have one at home, like I do in my garage, for example, get organized to maximize the power of 10 minutes. And these are all little tips and techniques and habits and practices that I've developed and sort of optimized over 25 years of my career, in which I teach, and which, people that apply them and use them, have breakthroughs in terms of the transformation in applying those, because that's where you move from information about how you do something to achieving the transformation for which you achieve as the result of doing it. Okay. Tada Wanasha, yes, I will send the link to the course. I absolutely will pop that in there. The last thing I want to touch on before we step off time management is burn your boats. Now, burn your boats is, and I use this, every day. And if you want to get something done and you know that you might procrastinate, and we had a question on Monday actually about how to overcome with procrastination, and this is how we answered it. But for those of you that weren't on the call on Monday, burn the boats is a technique that will help you avoid procrastination, because if you have something to do and you commit to doing it to somebody else, and possibly in a public forum like a webinar, or possibly to your boss in an email, or to your friend to meet them at the gym the next morning, for example, that public commitment cuts off your escape route, and it says you now have committed to doing something, and just for personal pride, you're going to do that job because you've committed to doing it. And hopefully it must be smart. It must be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-based. Okay. And we've coached a number of people on our webinars who've come up with exactly the same challenge. And I've got them to burn their boats in the chat. And then I followed up with them in the Facebook group afterwards. Cara, there were a couple of others. Cara needed to study. She was procrastinating. I said, okay, Cara, burn your boats. Tell us in the chat, how many hours study you're going to do today? She said, okay, I'm going to do 3. Followed up in the Facebook group after she did 3, because she told us on the live chat that she was going to do it. And it's, burn the boats is just a technique, but it's the act of doing it that changes your mental psychology. And it triggers you out of that mental procrastination, which can be a very dangerous place to be in. And the more you procrastinate, the less you're likely to get something done. Break through that with that burn the boats principle. And I go into burn the boats, and I actually tell a story in the course about a large scale burn the boats when I was implementing a large system, and I was struggling to get it in. And I stood up in front of 100 people at a town hall, and I said, we will implement this system by November, and it was August or whatever the case may be. And then, because I'd made that public commitment, we were single-mindedly focused on delivering that system, because it was a major frustration that people were having in their workplace that we were trying to solve. Okay, so we've got sort of 10 minutes left, and I do just want to jump onto conflict and communication here. Caleb asks, how do you sell yourself without coming across the potential? So Caleb, is a real challenge. And I mean, I run a brand called the Student Success Coach, and I try and build in authenticity into that. I try and build value into that. But I'm certain that people, might look at me and say, oh, there's Peter Alkema again, I'm tired of his brand, or I'm tired of his achievements. There's a degree to which, and if you go follow Gary Vaynerchuk, he's very good about sort of not worrying too much about that judgment. I think your trick is to then have the mentors and the coaches, like I've mentioned, who can keep you, within the guardrails of what, might then actually start to damage your brand. But if you are building a brand, whether it's a side hustle business, or whether the brand of your company, or whether it's your own individual brand, and the value proposition that you want to be associated with that brand into an organization, We've spoken a lot in this webinar and in a lot of my sessions about the hard work and the resilience and the patience and the management of your own expectations that must become part of your brand. But equally on top of that, there's nothing wrong with positioning yourself, selling yourself a little bit, putting yourself out there, making those public commitments like burning your boats that some people may perceive as pretentious, but 99% of the time, they're going to perceive it as pretentious because it's not them. And because, they would rather hate and be a hater than actually also stepping up and being out there and doing it themselves. And that's a reality in the workplace. Unfortunately, you're going to, as you climb the ladder and as you get those achievements and those successes, you're going to have people that are watching you, looking at you. And I always say, be careful of the people that don't clap when you achieve something, because you must be aware that there are those people that are judging and perceiving as pretentious. But if you can balance that perception with being able to point to the hours and the effort and the genuine value that you put in, you'll win that argument every single time. And people will look at your brand holistically. And you may wobble and you may have a couple of issues, but if the groundwork and the foundation is there and it comes through in how you position yourself over the long term, you'll find the right balance. Okay, hopefully that's helpful
Yeah,
there,
if
Caleb.
I can just
Okay,
also
yeah,
add to
Calvin.
Caleb's question real quick, I actually think it's a fantastic question. And it actually reminds me of something I read the other day about a traditional New Zealand mantra. And that is, the sweet potato doesn't say how sweet he is. Okay. And I think it all comes back to telling your story from someone else's perspective. I found that personally, that's the most powerful way to sell myself in interviews and with people I meet for the first time, is if I'm talking about myself, tell it from someone else's perspective. I think you've also mentioned that before, Peter. And then secondly, there's a power of recommendations, like on LinkedIn. If you can get one recommendation, that's telling the story from someone else's perspective. It's a lot more powerful than you trying to sell yourself directly.
Yep. So I spoke about social proof earlier, and that's exactly why I ask you guys for ratings and reviews, because I point to that social proof then to achieve success in these marketplaces like Udemy and YouTube, and the internet in general, which has the algorithms based on other people's recommendations, which I think is 100% to your point there as well. And there's the communications course, which I'm going to put the link on there. I think somebody's asked for it just now. And guys, we can run a little bit over. I don't actually have to jump off, so we don't need to rush like a steam train to finish. But I recognize that people will start jumping off at 2 p.m. Conflict is a reality. Now, I mean, if people find you pretentious or they don't like how you position yourself, then that conflict may be behind your back. It may be out in the open. It may be between other colleagues in the workplace. It's a fact of life. And the fact that we're all, working from home isn't going to take that conflict away. It's just going to emerge in different, and I've seen it in the chats and in the comments and, in the messaging and so on. So, communication, is so important. And that's why I've released this course about communication, because the better that you are as a communicator, the more tools you have in your toolbox to deal with that conflict when it arises. And if you can match that with the sort of the calmness and the level-headed that you need that comes from some maturity, then you'll be able to deal with that conflict as it arises. And the last point I would make is that an apology goes a long way, but you don't have to apologize for everything. You don't have to sort out the office politics. That's not your role. But just recognize that you're not perfect. You will make some mistakes, and be very specific about apologizing for those. And if it's to your boss, do that. I'm sorry that I didn't finish that report and send it to you by 4:30 last night. I only got it to you at 7 p.m. I do apologize for that. Be someone that is self-reflected and self-aware and open with an apology. I've found in my life that it has disarmed my critics and those people that would judge me, and that where I've been drawn into conflict, etc. It's neutralized it, and it's disarmed, that person, that sort of, because here's the thing, guys. There's only so many promotions. There's only so many roles at the top. There's only, a certain salary bill for an organization. As you go through your organization, you are going to be competing with people, and you need to build a brand that earns you the seat at the table and the right to achieve that progression. But recognize that on your way up, there's people that are not going to be climbing with you at the same pace. And the old saying, don't climb on people's backs because they're not going to help you when you fall back down, etc. And if you do fall back down a little bit, if you've built those relationships and you've been honest and open with your apologies and transparent in the way that you work, etc., there will be enough people around you that will help you back up when you need it. So conflict and communication and authenticity and apologies, and the use of information for the greater good. I often find people hoarding information and not sharing. Knowledge is power, and it's not just about CCing the world on an email. It's about being very thoughtful. And one of the tips that I teach in the communications course is when you send something with an attachment, make it very real and contextual for the person. And say, Calvin, I saw this report today on auditing in the 21st century using artificial intelligence, and I really thought that section 2.3 would be quite useful, specifically given the project that you're working on at the moment. Now, those extra few minutes to type up that email and send that through to Calvin directly means that I've leveraged information and my filtering of that information to his benefit. And that earns me just a couple of points of goodwill with Calvin. Not that you do it mechanically, but you do it to build valuable relationships. You do it through good communication and through thinking about how you can add value to them by sharing that information. Okay, guys, I think I have got one more slide. Okay, let's talk networking and LinkedIn. Okay, so networking, it's got the word work in it for a reason. It takes time, it takes effort, be patient, and it's not about being a socialite. It's about being very intentional in building professional relationships through which you can exchange value. And any network is an interaction of people in an ecosystem where there is mutual value to the people who interact. It's the same with a mentor. It's the same with a coach. It's the same with people that are going to connect with you on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is an extremely powerful platform on which to build up your network. Obviously, you must keep your profile updated, factual, and professional. And in the course, again, I give you a lot more detail around managing your LinkedIn profile. I give you a demo of my own LinkedIn profile. I take you through how you can manage it and maintain it to be professional and position yourself as best as possible. And I think you'll have degrees of, people in your network. You'll have those that you're very close to on a regular basis and that you actually rely on, depend on to be successful. Then you'll have a few more degrees of separation. Then you'll have people that are literally just connected with you on LinkedIn and you can't even remember why you connected with them or why they connected with you. And by the way, if you do connect with me on LinkedIn, please just mention, hey, Pete, I was in your webinar, whatever the case would be. And then I've got a note of attachment to our relationship on LinkedIn. So spend some time on LinkedIn. It is by far the biggest professional network, but it is a social media platform. It's just a professional version of it. So post content that's meaningful, follow people that are suitable to your area of work, and then reshare content and other people's posts to provide value to other people's networks. There is a lot more that you can do if you go deeper into networking on LinkedIn. And maybe we must set up a future webinar to have a look at that in due course. But certainly what I give you in the course is a demo of LinkedIn, through the lens of my own profile and how I manage my networks and connections and the type of tips and techniques that I think would be useful for you to apply if you go into setting up a LinkedIn profile, which I absolutely do think that you need to. So if anybody doesn't have a LinkedIn profile on the call today, go set one up. That's action number one. Action number two, if you haven't gone to ask for recommendations, go find 5 people to ask for recommendations. That's another action. Third action, if you haven't connected with myself and you want to, please drop me a network request and I will obviously connect with you and you'll be part of my network and I'll be part of yours. And if you need help in the future, then you can reach out to me by all means, because a network must be there to help you and it's there for you also to help other people and will be, I think, one of the single biggest differentiators for you as you go through your career. And very importantly, it's got jobs. Okay, you can go in there and you can type, software engineer positions in Johannesburg. There's positions loaded in there, and I actually demo that in the course. So whatever position it is that you're looking for, have you maximized the power of LinkedIn to go look for those? Recruiters are coming into LinkedIn. They are mining, some of them have, recruiting subscriptions into LinkedIn. They're mining your content. They're mining your posts. If you're demonstrating expertise and you're producing high quality IP on a certain topic with artificial intelligence, those recruiters are getting reports and your names are potentially coming up on short lists of candidates. And look, maybe not in the early days of your career, and it certainly has, for me, happened a lot more in the last 10 years, I would say, but you will be headhunted in LinkedIn. There's no question about it, because those subscriptions that the recruiters have enable them to email you directly in your inbox, even though you're not connected to that person. And then in LinkedIn, in that message, it says, do you want to hear more about this offer or not? And you can just send a short answer back to them, etc. Okay, so that's LinkedIn. There's a lot more of that in the course, which I'd really like you guys to go through and have a look at. Okay, so Calvin, any last thoughts from your side? And we've now completed the first 2 of these 4 webinars, and really the 2 webinars are the 2 sections of this course: improve your job prospects and accelerate your career growth. I'll drop that into the chat just now. Calvin, do you want to kind of create a little bit of excitement around the next 2 that are coming up, which will be talking about digital disruption and digital transformation?
Sure. Thanks, Peter. Yeah, so actually, well, in fact, Peter let me read his book just as he released it, and I absolutely loved it. I think I finished it in a day. I couldn't put it down, and I think it's short and sweet. That's what I loved about it. And it's got so many relevant, easy to understand, sections in there that describe, digital disruption, digital transformation, discontinuous innovation. So really, it's really interesting. A lot of terms in there that you could use in dialogue. When you're chatting with someone. And I think we all got to know this stuff, guys. It's happening all around us, and I think we've got to go into the workforce aware of all these things. We don't have to necessarily understand them at a deep level, but we need to be aware of them. And I think that these next 2 courses that are going to happen, not next week, the next week, so in the week of the 31st of March, I think it is, we're going to be touching on some interesting stuff, guys, about digital transformation and digital disruption. So very excited.
Absolutely, Calvin. So there's the book, which you can go and grab off Amazon, and I've put the link there. And then there's also the course, and there's obviously different material in both of them. But the ebook really accompanies the course. The course emphasizes your personal transformation over information. As I always say, obviously the book is information, and a lot of people love reading, as we've heard today. And once they've been through my course, they like to keep that version of the course almost in their Kindle, so they can go back to it and they can just refresh themselves without having to go through a video again and go into a course and all the rest of it. So yeah, absolutely. The book is available, and Calvin's review is on there. But I put the link also to this course, Improve Your Job Prospects and Accelerate Your Career Growth, which is something that you can go and grab for free. And then the communication skills course that I mentioned, which is available at a discounted price this week only. And hopefully from next week, I'll be able to put it on free promotion. But if you want to go and grab it, it's available there. And as I say, the webinar tomorrow, 12 o'clock on this channel, I'll be unpacking this course and going through in a lot more detail. And as you can see there, learn high impact communication skills for emails, group messaging, online meetings, social media, and verbal communication. And once again, just over 25 years, these are the tips and the tricks that I've developed, and then which I teach you in the course, and I give you some worksheets, and I really help you get the personal transformation that you need, and that will be useful for you to become a better communicator. And then this is the other ebook that I've made available, and this one you can grab for free, which also has the communication skills in it. And as I say, that is available. If you are a Kindle reader and you subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, you can go and grab it for free there. There's always a free preview, but I think for this week until tomorrow evening, you can go and grab it for free there. And again, guys, please, I love doing this, and I love seeing the transformation in my student community. And the only thing that I really ask is, again, and we've heard it, the reason for it today is, that social proof of those ratings and reviews. And listen, it doesn't have to always be glowing. If it's not great, put that in your feedback. I really need to know where I can improve these courses and books and this content, so that it helps more people like yourselves, and we can get more people to be successful as students and in the workplace. Guys, then the last thing really for me is to ask if there are any questions, I guess. that you might have. I think we have had a lot of questions. One thing that you'll see if you subscribed onto the YouTube channel is that I go back into these webinars and I pick up the unanswered questions, and then I actually produce a smaller video answering that question. And so you can very quickly scan down the YouTube channel to see if any of those questions, have been picked up and answered. So if we haven't been able to get to the webinar, and we probably won't be able to get to any more now because we've run out of time, I will endeavor then to go back and pick them up afterwards. And having said all that, guys, I think you'll pick this up from me. Go and take action. That's the one thing that you can do. Go set up your LinkedIn profile. Go and ask for recommendations. Go connect with myself. Go and update your CV. Go check out Novoresume. Go write a cover letter for that company that you think you now have the confidence to approach for a job. Just take action. There's no shortage of lessons in the courses, and the guidance and the direction that I give you in the courses to and which specific actions to take. It's then up to you to actually complete that transformation and convert that information into the goals that you need to achieve. And I have a vested interest in you guys achieving your goals, but it absolutely relies on you taking action. If you struggle to take action, burn your boats so that you then committed, invested into taking that action. And I teach you that burn the boats principle in the course. So go check it out, and I look forward to seeing all of your success. And as Calvin said, I look forward to seeing you in the digital disruption webinar on the 29th of March. I think it's either at 12 or 1 o'clock. We'll notify you and market those two webinars. Julian asks, do you provide these types of webinars to people already in the workplace? All the time, Julian. I mean, I get asked to run these for internal sessions. So whereas I would be here on my YouTube channel, I would just hop onto a Teams call or a Teams live webinar, for example. And look, I mean, maybe just quickly to mention, FNB has a subscription into the Udemy for Business catalog, of which I've got 8 courses on there. So, but I work for FNB, right? So they have access to my knowledge and input. It shouldn't only be through the courses. Employees do like to take courses so they can add it to their CV. But Julian, yes, all the time I'm asked to help out with inductees or with town halls, and particularly in our digital way of working. From one day to the next, I get asked to go and give input and help people. Certainly in our sort of earlier or more junior ranks, and I give mentorship training to call centers or to managers or to HR professionals. I teach people on digital transformation. And look, my full-time role, my full-time day job is integrated planning for FirstRand's digital transformation. So my full job for the last 4 years has been digital transformation in financial services. A lot of what I talk about and teach through my channel and these webinars is kind of peripheral to that. But what you'll pick up in the next 2 webinars is the nuts and bolts, and that's why it's been a bestseller on Amazon and on Udemy. That's why I can talk with the credibility and the authority of doing it on a regular basis. And I hope you'll join us for that. But Julian, pop into the Facebook group, hop onto the YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see everything else that I make available. All right, Calvin, I think let's leave it there. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the 29th of March, or in the Facebook group, or hop onto the podcasts, or on the YouTube channel. There's so many places, and you can get value from it. It's my commitment to your success. LinkedIn's also great, and I look forward to seeing you there. Cheers, Calvin. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks, Peter. Thank you, everyone.